most of your accounting and finance and business lectures, like you're probably seeing in 4090, you always start off by identifying a problem, analyze the problem or the opportunity. I've made this up. This word doesn't exist, right? Opportunity. Sometimes you have a problem, sometimes you have an opportunity. So you start with that, you do your research, you formulate, and you model. So this is where the explanation bit comes. People say there is a model, there's an equation, there's a formula. That's all this, right? That's all rationality. That's all positivism. And then you analyze a model, you test it by getting some data, Does it work? Then you implement. Does it not work? You go back and you keep doing that. So this is the traditional academic training that you will have all the time. Okay? A lot of financial accounting does not even talk about this. It will assume that that is the truth. Right? So what do? You collect some data. How do you collect it? You debit and you credit. You debit and you credit. What do? You add it up. At the end of the period, you explain the sales, the profit. You are assuming that people will use those numbers objectively in working out what will maximize shareholders' wealth. So I think you're doing that in BM 4117, isn't it? BM 4117?
5.
415. Sorry, I keep saying 7. 415.
6.
It's society.
No, BM 4115.
BM. What are you doing with RAW?
Yeah.
RAW 415, isn't it? What are you doing? Stakeholder analysis, that kind of thing?
Yes, doing personal analysis.
So that's that. All of that is built around the idea that we need to maximize the value of the company for the shareholders, that kind of thing. That is classic rationality there. And next semester, when you start talking to Kirsty in management accounting, and subsequently with Mohammed in management accounting, a lot of the things you will talk about will be about this, right? How do you minimize the risk? How do you maximize the return? And expected utility and all those things. The problem with that is, let's just come towards the end where we can keep talking. There is a place for models. There is a place for equations and all that. We're not saying there isn't a place for them. But they can only be used in problem contexts where you can structure the elements of the problem domain. Where the literature is so developed that we know the things that cause things. So can you give me an example of a problem domain where we probably have structure, where we think rationality will probably be the best way of solving problems?
Global warming.
Global warming.
Yeah.
How do you mean?
I mean, a lot of people think it's just a theory and it's just emotional. People can ignore it. But there is facts. There are studies. This is very non-judgmental. It's all to do with choice and things.
Right. So
yeah.
there is still that debate, though, isn't there? There are even some scientists who think that global warming and climate change is an illusion. Do you share that sentiment? Or do you think with natural things, rationality and positivism is probably, or modeling is probably a good way of approaching things? Yes. So in the physical sciences, there isn't much debate that things can be measured or modeled. So in physics, in chemistry, in biology, to an extent, in those problem domains, you're normally able to observe things, measure things, and track them. Yeah, so that would be a good problem domain. Any other problem domain or any other aspect of life where things can be probably structured because we can identify and measure and track things very easily?
Trends in sales.
trends in sales. What do you think? Is it easily measured? Is he alone in thinking that way? Can you join him, please? Can you join Marcus? Sales. Yeah, if you look back, you have the data. What have we sold and all that? So the explanations bit will be easy. How do you think about predicting sales? Will it be easy? You're normally noisier than this. Come on.
But it can be predictable if you have a history for many years. For example, if 10 years was the sales were like 80% up.
Yeah. You need to
This
study.
year will be like the same.
It will be easier to predict sales, you think?
It depends on the nature of the product. If it's like a standard form, like, I don't know, paper or nuts and screws, they'll always sell. But if it's like a new phone with a market like it, will whoever want to buy it, will it still be relevant in 5 years and so forth?
So it depends on what you're predicting. I think that's probably true, isn't it? So if you have something like maybe utility consumption, water, gas, electricity and things, because people use it more or less in the same way around the year, depending on the temperature and then weather and all that, you can predict. But you're right, in predicting sales for some luxuries or new things that have not been there before. But can you follow that thought? Follow that idea and think about the problem domain that you're looking at and predictions for that problem domain. Do you think it will be easy to predict knife crime? Do you think it will be easy to predict the use of technology in secondary schools? Do you think it will be easy to predict the uptake of solar panels in the UK? Do you think it will be easy to predict innovations for online safety for kids? Will it be easy to predict?
It's not easy, but it is
Possible.
It is possible.
It is possible. Do you think it will be accurate? Your predictions are likely to be accurate. Water accessibility in Uganda. What are the trends that you may have to predict? Before you make any prediction, think about the structure, right, the nature of that problem. Because if you don't get that bit right, then you cannot really predict. In the literature, people seem to suggest that we have to look at probably reality in this manner. Right, so if I'm allowed to use just these two words, and then on the top here, we think about psychology. If you're predicting things that are physical, really physical in nature, if you're making decisions about them, it is probably easier. Because things that don't have a mind behave in a predictable manner, more or less. The speed of the wind, the heat of the sun, things that don't think, where there's no mind involved. But the moment you move beyond things that are purely physical and you begin to talk about things that are social, where people are involved, then you have to step back and think carefully. Because you cannot think usually clearly about what another person is thinking. We cannot observe the mind of a person. Can we? Can I? Oh, it would be a joy if I could see what you're thinking now, guys. I don't know. Are you still here, by the way? Are you following this? Or are you physically here but mentally floating away somewhere, thinking about lunch or a date sometime later later on today. Who knows? But when people are involved, it becomes trickier because of the mind. Because people can make choices that you cannot observe. Sometimes you can even get them to a place physically, but in their mind, they are not there. They don't want to do it. What do you do? So that's something that we have to begin to think about. Other aspects cannot be structured easily, requiring intuition and judgment. So if you leave the domain of the physical and you start talking about social and psychological issues, that is where judgment dominates. You can provide all the evidence, physical evidence, but people can doubt whether climate change is real or not. Evidence might say, come on, this place is getting warmer. The guy says, I don't feel it. I don't feel it. How do you model the feeling of a person and whether they will respond to the data? So there's a huge caution here, guys. Human judgment and intuition is not always rational. People make decisions irrespective of what the data says. Because in their own mind, things are going on. So we've got a lot of things here that you can read on. Right? Each of these can take you a lifetime, right? Frankly. But the key word that appeared in the literature on judgment is the work on bounded rationality, which began in the 50s and 60s saying, well, hang on, if you want people to really explore the data and look at all possible solutions and compare them and find a means of picking the best, that's not how the human mind works. It is not possible to ever find out all the data. And people don't have all the patience to wait. And they sometimes don't even have the appetite. So they will try and find shortcuts to solving problems. It's what we call heuristics. For most things, people find a shortcut and they make it a habit of relying on that shortcut. Do you think you have any shortcuts? Personally, do you have any heuristics? Or are you the thorough person who always gets all the evidence and compares all the solutions and picks the best all the time? Is that what you do? Have you ever done that for any problem that you solved? Probably not. So that literature came up with the idea of heuristics, and with heuristics comes up with the concept of biases. And bias is, if you like, a personal way of doing things that might not work, but which a person is happy with. I don't care, that's how I do it anyway. We always do it that way. You're telling me something new, but I'm not going to change because I'm not used to that. There are some very colorful biases, like love at first sight. Anybody ever experienced that? Oh, I can see somebody going, no, that's not me. Hang on, wait. I mean, it might not be with a person, but when you go out buying things, sometimes people don't wait. Do you look at all the options before you buy things, or do you sometimes look at one, I think I'll get that. And then usually that becomes a benchmark. You keep looking and then you come back to that. Does that happen to you? That's a bias. It's called a halo effect. Sometimes you meet a person and you like them. They haven't said a word, but you like them. Could be a tutor. So watch out for that, right? You might get onto a module, see a guy and like, I don't really like this guy. But the tutor hasn't said a word yet, right? He probably is having a bad morning, so he hasn't smiled. It doesn't mean he's a bad person, but somehow, because you saw him with a frown the first time, that will be the image that you might carry for a long time. And Guy is trying to help you, but you're not responding because you don't like him. That could impact on you. So watch out for that. Because of that, people make mistakes. I mean, there aren't many experts when it comes to social and psychological decision making. Because you cannot really tell what people are thinking. Sometimes you get it wrong because you have to guess what that person's response will be. How about the fact that sometimes you have multiple goals? You remember the previous paradigm said you have a goal, you have a problem, but what if the goals are many? And what if the goals are conflicting? I want to be happy, I want to sleep very well, I have an assignment that's due, I need to score high marks in that. Do I still stick with waking up at 5 o'clock and sleeping at 8 p.m.? Multiple goals. Do I have to give up on a bit of my sleep time, just a bit, to catch up on the work? Or can I excuse myself and stick to 9 hours sleep whilst the assignment remains undone? Multiple goals. The other silly one is friends are saying we should go out. We had someone who didn't submit an assignment because they had to go out with friends and things and came back and all those things. Different goals. How do you prioritize them? Different people will give different priorities. So it is very difficult to stick to structured, rational decision making when there is that individual choice involved. What if the outcomes cannot be measured or quantified in monetary terms? What is the cost of global warming? What is the cost of lack of sleep? What is the cost of not being happy? What if the outcomes are not physical and measurable, but psychological and mental? How do you become rational about that? Because a lot of things are intangible. And then I can see Action smiling there. Even in financial accounting, you get to the point where you may have to ditch your classic rational assumptions because you're dealing with intangible assets. And you have to think about how to value them and how to tell the truth about intangibles. Wow! Who can tell the truth about intangibles? Friends, what we're saying is, at this level, there is complexity. Because different types of physical things are combined with different types of social institutions and social artifacts, which give us different mental approaches to life. And when you have complexity, classic, rational, positivist assumptions will not consistently tell you the truth. You may have to make judgments. And you will make a lot of judgments. So, we need to get you to develop your intuitive abilities. Okay? And that's why you're solving different problems. Different modules of different things. We're giving you that, all of that, so that you'll be able to improve on your ability to make judgments. Because data will always not be complete. There will be incomplete data. You have to make assumptions. You have to make decisions quickly. Right? You have to analyze things quickly. And that's what we are trying to do, so that we can improve on the way we make judgments in complex contexts. To bring that long conversation, it's become a monologue now. To bring that to an end, let's think about this, okay? To get the most of what we have just said, for any problem that you're faced, you need to start thinking about the nature of the problem context. Am I dealing with something here, or am I dealing with things that fall in that domain? And for you to really get to grip with that, you have to start thinking about stakeholders. I think you've done that maybe for BM 4115. So, who, in terms of people and organizations and social institutions, who are involved, who are impacted upon by the problem gap? Who are they? Can you do a bit of mind mapping by drawing a network of relationships, causes and effects. Who is doing the bad thing and who is suffering? And why is that person doing that bad thing? Where is it coming from? So can we do a bit of network of cause and effects? That's this impact on that. You end up with something mazy. If you don't get something that is mazy, then you haven't thought through it carefully. It should be complex like that. We like mind maps. And as you do that, think about interests and goals. So this stakeholder here has this goal, and that stakeholder here has that goal. So this guy is doing that, and because of that, it's affecting that goal and its achievement. When you thought through that, you probably will begin to see instances where bringing a model or a structure to the conversation would work, and instances where surely there are so many things at play there that you may need to develop some judgment. We need you to map that out